Are people seeing an increase in the final stage of a new business pitch that goes to procurement? Has anybody?
No.
That procurement at clients are actually making decisions now?
2 in the last week. 2 in the last week.
Which really kind of, to Glenn's point.
Did you win them?
Waiting.
Yeah.
So then it's good. I love procurement.
Yeah, liquidation sale. We got to win this one. I've had some experience with it, and chatting with some others that the decision is almost deferred sometimes.
Yeah.
To a procurement department. And again, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. If I'm a client, I guess sometimes I think it's a good thing if I'm just looking to save money, but really tough to make a relationship.
It really makes the trust question pretty difficult.
Yeah. What's the value again? I mean, the cheapest isn't necessarily the best. The best is the best. Now, sometimes just way too expensive as well, but certainty is worth a lot of money. If you know it's going to deliver, then it's worth the cost. The difficulty with our business is there's very little certainty. And that's the idea of ROI. So maybe there's new models that allow people to invest so that if you succeed, you really succeed. If you fail, you deserve to share in that failure. So that's an interesting opportunity.
Now, Glenn's discussion about, really doing what you can to win the business and undercutting other agencies, is that coming from the holding companies? Is that really just the big network agencies that are kind of built that way? I know that you've worked at both, and you've worked at both. You're currently at the Canadian Independent, but I've worked at both. There's fewer independents in Canada now than I think we've ever had. Are the big holding companies really these are publicly traded companies who are all about the bottom line, and I get that. Is that having an adverse effect on the business?
I think the larger companies are certainly have to be responsive to their shareholders, but I think smaller companies have to be responsive to their own bottom line as well, and so they need to stay competitive. So I think it's right across the board from what I've seen.
There's been a couple examples this year from independent shops dropping their drawers.
And losing money because of it. Losing money.
Losing money.
The most powerful pricing strategy is no. And saying, no, we're not going to take that piece of business, because you can cite a few examples where people have undercut so low that they can't even pay off their studio.
Yeah.
So they've got stuff cycling through, but they're starving. It's anorexia. They're starving themselves, or bulimia. I mean, they're feeding, but they're starving themselves.
Yeah.
And that's frightening. I mean, certainly the amount of money that's available is being cut down, and it's it's hitting the bone. And maybe it should. I mean, that's the way it works. But I think people are going to get a rude awakening when they start to get a product that's really undernourished.
Now that need for revenue is creating some agencies to pull stuff in-house. So agencies have in-house editors and in-house animators, and they're trying to reclaim some of that revenue. Is that a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to the work, Israel, I guess?
I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of that, of actually bringing in the house, because you're right. The work does start to suffer. You can always get better talent outside of the walls, and I think when you do that, they're going to work with you anyway. So it's not like you need to necessarily invest in an in-house suite or massive studio, or have everything, all the capabilities in-house. They're all available outside. So to get the best work out the door that's best for your client, I think it's it only makes sense to see who the best fit is to actually work on your project versus like force fitting it because it's convenient. It's just down the hall, and because it's churning money for you. But in the long run, I think it's just going to generate more money for you anyway. If you do great work, that's going to attract more clients, and the cycle is just going to flourish that way.
Right. But I see why people would go down that road, Dave? Do you see why an agency would?
Well, it's purely financially driven, but I absolutely agree with Israel. I think you hire the best people for the job, and someone who's on the payroll is going to behave differently than someone that you award a job to, saying, you know what, we looked at everyone who does this particular kind of thing, and we feel like you're the perfect person for this job. That's obviously going to motivate them to do the best work that they possibly can, versus someone who's on the payroll and probably going to do this kind of thing anyway, so doesn't really have to put a lot of effort into it.
Don't think that the other people are going to sit back and allow you to eat their supper either. They're going to get people and they're going to start competing in the same vein. You know, there were a lot of graphic companies, a lot of digital companies that they start to bring in some creative, and they're an agency now. So there seem to be two formats. It's shotgun or sniper. And you'll have people who have one-stop shop with everything, and then there'll be bespoke snipers who do one thing extremely well. And they'll charge for it, and they'll find other people to partner with. But there's a lot of shotguns coming. Yep.
We have seen a very entrepreneurial group of people who traditionally work directly and exclusively with agencies in post or in production. Do you think that's gonna, are those guys gonna start taking the lead, and kind of bring in a copywriter when they want? Because it's starting to happen in some cases. Do you think? I don't know, Virginia, think clients?
Well, I might be the wrong person to ask in this particular case because we do everything in-house, but I mean, that's what digital shops do. I think ultimately every shop that's been around, and we've been around for, over 10 years, started out, as a small group of people that, everybody did a little bit of everything. And then what happens as, the business grows is you start hiring the experts, but you want the business to remain in-house because, to get the job done, there's a lot of, it's a deadline business.
Yeah.
There's an awful quote. It's a deadline business, but because that's what advertising is. But in particular, and especially where digital is concerned, everybody that's pure play and has been started off as a group of small people that then started to, while I'm jack of all trades, I'm gonna stop doing this one thing, and then I'm gonna bring someone in who's an expert at that. So we try to hire the experts and build the team and keep everything in-house because there's so much conversation and the technology changes so quickly. And with the birth of things like Facebook and their ever morphing API, you need to have someone who's sitting there literally plugged into Facebook, 24/7 to understand what's happening. And that means you need other people in that department. That's a technical department that needs to grow and grow and grow in order to maintain and keep up with what's happening in this space. So for me and for us, it's a blessing to be able to keep hiring and keep bringing people in and having the various departments and have that person at my disposal. It's really hard to outsource and hire programmers and send the work out because you lose so much control and so much time. In order to keep the best, creative alive, you really should be doing it in-house.
Right.
It seems the difference is that in Virginia's experience, they've gone out and identified the experts and hired the experts, whereas in the case of a lot of agencies, they're hiring someone because it's a way to save money. They're not looking for the expert, not by a long shot. They're looking for the guy that will get it done okay.
But that model of we're going to bring in the experts and assemble a team that we use, the traditional agencies use on the production and post-production side, what's to stop that from, and again, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, from infiltrating the agency to the point of, well, we're not going to have teams on staff. We're just going to go out and get a freelance team that's the best for this job. Because don't creative teams and maybe creative directors act the same way? We said somebody on the payroll like very different from somebody off the payroll. I don't know, John. Can you see that model?
A decentralized model?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's happening. It's happening in the States more.
Yeah.
Time will tell whether it's successful or not, but decentralization is totally happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's happening here in the city. I mean, I believe that the creative department now is Starbucks. If you want a creative person, you go to Starbucks. You don't find creative people in agencies because everyone recognizes that you can't get any work done there. So I mean, whether you've got someone on the payroll working at Starbucks or a freelance team who you've identified as being experts working at Starbucks, it doesn't matter. The result is hopefully the same. You will get the best possible result.
Yeah.
But as John says, it's an experiment. I think there's a lot of reinvention going on in terms of how an agency works and what an agency is, and maybe production companies may be morphing into agencies. We're probably going to see a lot of different models in the next decade, and I think that's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
It's a necessary thing.
Yeah. To the point, the agencies may say, we don't have a dental plan, but we do. Here's a Starbucks card. Yes. Once a month, you get $50 on this Starbucks card.